welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. You can see everyone piling in right now. We had over 2,000 people. I can't remember last time we had over 2,000 people register for one of these things. So, Mr. Josh Braun, well done. The people are turning out to see you. How you doing?
Don't people know there's a lot of good stuff on Netflix, like The Queen's Gambit? Like, what are people doing tuning into this thing? There's this Outsider show on HBO that's amazing. All right, whatever.
Queen's Gambit was good. That was a really good one.
It was good.
But we don't have too much time to talk about The Queen's Gambit. So really quickly, I did want to address the elephant in the room because it feels a little bit strange not to. So the mood around the world is certainly a little somber today. And Josh and I thought about potentially rescheduling this. But upon a little reflection, we decided that some entertainment and maybe some education could come as a welcome distraction to many. Certainly been a tough run. Yesterday's events added to that, but I stay forever optimistic that we'll come together and figure this thing out. Humans are a strange bunch and we don't learn lessons easily, but inevitably we will learn the lessons we had to from this time period in history, and we'll all be wiser for it. So thank you all for hanging with us. Times like this are when community really matters. And so before I do hand the reins to Josh, super quick housekeeping. These are all recorded. So if you got to jump off, we'll have this in your inbox within about 24 hours. And second, we got a lot of content to get through. Josh is sharing some content he hasn't done before. So we've got some really, really cool stuff. But we do want to hear from you. If you have questions, there's a Q&A at the bottom. I'll be manning that. I have no problem interrupting Josh and being like, hey, we got a super good question. Can we answer this? We do these for you, the community. So get your questions in there. I'll try and sneak a few in. And if we have time at the end, we'll get to the ones that are left. We may also go a little bit long. I just want to warn everyone, there is a ton of content in here. Again, if you have to jump off at the end of the hour, that's fine. We'll send you the recording. But that's it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Josh, I'm going to hand the reins over to you, and let's rock and roll.
Let's start with a pop quiz. Type your answer into the chat. Imagine that you are a salesperson and you are responsible for booking meetings. You make a cold call to a prospect. She picks up the phone and she says this: "You caught me at the gym." What do you say? Let's type it in the chat. Scott, bark out some answers as you see them coming in.
What are you hitting? How's your workout going? When's a better time for us to chat? Are you on the rowing machine? Is it leg day? What's your max bench? I like that one. Have a great workout. Who answers the phone at the gym? Did I catch you at a bad time? Okay, that's awesome. Would you have 5 minutes at 3 p.m.?
So that last one, would you have 5 minutes at 3 p.m.? So I actually asked this question on LinkedIn, and you kind of notice about these responses. They kind of fell into two buckets. So this is a LinkedIn poll. It got about 47,000 views and 189 comments. And they fell into these two buckets. One of them was a bucket that I'm going to call pressure, which was that last one that we heard, which was, hey, sorry I caught you at a bad time. When would be a better time to call you back? Can I take 5 minutes? Then the other bucket would be what I'm going to call the no pressure bucket. So I'm going to show you some of these responses. And in the chat, I want you to type in if these responses feel like pressure, meaning I'm trying to pressure you to move forward from my agenda, trying to get you to book a meeting, or if there are no pressure responses. So here's the first one that someone typed in on LinkedIn. It looks like you're hard at work in the gym, and it's an important time for you. I was calling to make a proper introduction to myself as your account manager for ABC, but I understand I'm catching you at a bad time. I'll go ahead and send a calendar invite for this afternoon. Does that work for you? So is that pressure, Scott, or no pressure?
We've got 100% of folks saying pressure. Oh, 99.9. I saw one no pressure.
Yeah, so that's a pressure one. All right, so here's another one. Well, better than catching you in a meeting. Health is key. With a flash of your time to discuss ways to improve your business health, ... Pressure or no pressure?
We've got we're a mixed bag on this one. We got 50 pressure, 50 no pressure.
Would like a flash of your time to discuss. That's the tell. When you are asking people for time, when you are pushing your agenda, that's a pressure response. Let's try another one. How long is the wait for the treadmill? Right, that's a no pressure response. And there was a lot of great responses we heard earlier. Clearly, you have a few things going on. I find if I'm given some opportunity to pick the time that it's more convenient, again, asking for time, pressure. You're not skipping leg day, are you? Again, no pressure. Since we both work out and know how important that is, can I call you back when you're leaving the gym? Pressure.
Sure.
Are you doing back and buys and tries?
No pressure.
No pressure. This is how the percentage broke out. I want you to take a guess of the close to 200 responses that I got on LinkedIn, and we heard a small sample of them at the beginning. What percentage of the responses do you think were pressure-based versus no pressure-based? Do you think it was 50-50? Do you think it was 60-40 in terms of pressure to no pressure?
I'm gonna personally say 60% pressure, 40% no pressure. As the voice of our attendees here, we're all over the map. 70-30, a lot of 90-10s I saw. What are we at?
82-18.
Wow.
So the question becomes, why is this? Why do people feel inclined to be able to pressure people into getting a meeting when they're at the gym working out? And the answer is that the selling process is kind of a straight line. We sell because we have an intent to move someone forward, and yet the buying process is more of like a little wiggly line. And so what ends up happening when we actually pressure people and we try to overcome objections and we try to push people forward is that they can smell our commission breath. They know we have an ulterior motive. They know we have our best interests before their best interests. The problem, of course, is that when people feel pressured, they actually have a tendency to pull away. You might have experienced this if you were at the mall and one of those aggressive mall kiosk people said, can I ask you a question? You're going to pull away because you feel like you're sold. It's also the case oftentimes when you pressure people that they actually get angry. I'll prove it to you. This is actually a call from a few years ago that somebody made to Comcast. And what they were trying to do, his name was Ryan, was cancel his bill. And the salesperson on the other end was a retention specialist. And retention specialists are paid to overcome objections at all costs to be able to make sure that people don't cancel. Here's a little clip of the call.
We'd like to disconnect. We'd like to disconnect, please.
Okay, so why is it that you don't want the faster speed? Help me understand why you don't want faster internet.
Help me understand why you can't just disconnect us.
Because my job is to have a conversation with you about this. Keeping your service, about finding out why it is that you're looking to cancel the service. Being that we are the number one provider of internet and TV service in the entire country. Okay, why is it that you're not wanting to have the number one rated internet service, number one rated TV service available?
I'm declining to state we're switching providers. Can you please go to the next question?
Okay. So what is it about us towns that's making you...
So that goes on for about 15 minutes, and obviously the call went viral. And into the chat, why did this call make you cringe when you were listening to it? Scott, why did it make you cringe? I noticed you were kind of shaking your head back and forth a couple times.
It's gross. It's everything you don't like. He's trying to get someone to do something that they clearly don't want to do. He's not helping.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what people think objection handling is all about is trying to change someone's mind. And changing minds, it just doesn't work. There's something called the backfire effect. Not once has someone who had a different political view than me changed their mind when I made some argument. It just hasn't happened ever. In fact, whenever you try to change people's minds, it actually has the opposite effect. Scott told me when we were on the bus tour, we can go anywhere you want, but we can't go to Katz's for deli. And that's kind of where I wanted to go. People don't like it when their freedom of choice is being taken away. We're also taught that prospects lie all the time. And because they lie, we have to overcome the objection. Now, Scott, did you sense that Ryan was lying on that call?
Yeah.
Ryan was the actual person trying to cancel. Was he lying? Was he trying to...
No.
How'd you know?
His tone. He was just straightforward.
Yeah, he was straightforward. He had oomph, meaning there was a reason behind it. When someone's giving you a reason behind an objection, or what I call oomph, you know it's true. When you treat a truth like an objection, you piss people off. So let's actually play a little game called Truth, Lie, or Not Sure. I'm going to show you some objections, and you're going to tell me if you think it's the truth, meaning there's oomph behind it. There's a reason someone's giving you. It's a lie, or you're not sure. So here's the first one. I can't talk right now. Truth, lie, or not sure?
You've got lots of lies. I'm going to say it's a lie.
Okay, what about this one? I can't talk right now because I'm on my way to the hospital.
Truth.
So oddly enough, when I role play this one with sales teams, a lot of times the response that I get isn't that 80%. Sorry to hear that. Can I call you back in 5 minutes? When would be a better time to call? When you say that to somebody who's on their way to the hospital, you're treating a truth like an objection, you're going to piss people off. What about this one? Send me some information.
Lie.
What about this one? Call me next quarter because budgets are frozen due to the pandemic and we're having a ton of layoffs.
True.
True. This is a very important concept as we get deeper into the workshop, is to discern the difference between truths and lies, because our objective isn't to overcome the objection. It's going to be to get to more truth. That's the purpose of this workshop. I'm going to be teaching you some techniques and tactics and phraseology that's going to help you develop trust when prospects push back, so that you can actually get to the truth, which is one of two things. Either the prospect would like to continue talking or they don't at this time. And either way is okay. This is the opposite of how most people treat objections, which is to move things forward and to overcome them with rebuttal scripts. And when you do that, people can smell your commission breath and they're repelled by it. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to stand on the shoulders of a couple giants. One of them is this guy, Chris Voss, who I had the pleasure of meeting and having on my podcast. Chris is a former hostage negotiator for the FBI, and he uses a lot of the things that you're going to learn in this workshop to free people that are being held captive. And it turns out what he's selling is jail time. If people get free, they go to jail. And the stakes are really high. Either someone dies or they don't. We're also going to be relying on this guy, Carl Rogers, who is an American psychologist who has all of his work based on making people feel understood. He had this interesting epiphany when he started his work, which was just by making people feel heard and understood and listened to, people would have these massive, massive breakthroughs. So let's actually go through some of this stuff. Before we delve in, there's some disclaimers. One is, I'm not Yoda. I'm not going to be able to give you any kind of force, superpower that you're going to be able to put on people to change their mind. Two, I am going to be sharing some phraseology with you, some specific words and things to say. You might say to yourself, Josh, I would never say that. Those aren't the words that would come out of my mouth. If you have that thought, I want you to stop yourself and think, what's the intent? What's the psychology behind these words? And can I make the words my own? Third, I'm going to be presenting some stuff. If I was presenting some stuff on skiing, how to ski, Scott, would you know how to ski at the end of the workshop if I just gave you a PowerPoint presentation?
Probably not.
No, because you actually have to ski. So although I'm going to be giving you some knowledge to burn this stuff in, and I practice this stuff every day, you got to actually go out and do it and practice it and get your reps in. I call it I do over IQ. And finally, you might disagree with me on some of this stuff that you're going to hear, and that's okay. I'm not here to argue with you, and I'm certainly not here to change your mind. I am here to give you some tools that you can add to your toolbox that I think will help you have more productive conversations, not only in your business life, but also in your personal life as well. So let's get into this. It starts with this. Whenever someone pushes back, no matter what the pushback is, no matter what the objection is, I want you to fight the urge that you have deep down inside to change the mind of the person that you're talking to. And it's ingrained in us as salespeople because we're trying to move the sale forward. We're paid to book the meeting. Oddly enough, when you let go of this, you have more productive conversations and you actually end up booking more meetings. But when your intent is to change a mind, you actually act and behave in ways that are off-putting. So what does changing minds sound like? Sounds like this. Someone says, I don't want a 12-month contract. And you might say, well, our solution requires time and resources to implement and to learn how to use. It wouldn't be worth your time if you're only going to use it for a few months. That's what's called changing a mind. This is actually from a rebuttal book on objections, right? So here's another one. Our process is fine. We don't need another expense. This is what overcoming an objection would sound like. Changing a mind would sound like this. I just want to show you what's new. Many of our customers were doing this when I reached out, but what they found is this, the whole feel, felt, found thing. Are you available Tuesday at 3 or 4? You might get a yes to this sometimes, but it'll be a false yes. And I get emails all the time with people saying they said yes, but they didn't show up. Here's why. Because it's a fake yes. They're just saying yes to get you off the phone. They don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Here's another one. Send me some information. I just want to open up a dialogue. Can I show you how we can help Tuesday at 2? This is all changing minds. The problem with changing minds is it turns into a tug of war. It sort of secretly implies that you're wrong and I'm right. And the cause of it is that we're selling in 5th gear. We're trying to go really, really fast. So what I want to teach you today with the help of Carl Rogers and Chris Voss is to downshift into 1st gear, which is really, really hard when you're used to stepping on the accelerator, especially in this era of tools that allow us to send out 15 emails within a span of 2 or 3 weeks. And oddly enough, when you shift down into 1st gear, you actually end up having more conversations. So we're going to downshift, we're going to detach from the outcome, we're going to get to more truth. Instead of overcoming objections, we're going to learn a technique that helps you understand them, just like a counselor would do, just like Carl Rogers would do. When people feel like you get them, when they feel deeply heard, they're more open to what it is that you have to say. It's non-judgmental, non-agenda listening approach. Very simple, but not easy, because most of the time when we're listening to objections, we're thinking about what we're going to say to overcome it. We're listening to talk. So you'll get these concepts, but these concepts have to be practiced. And I practice a lot of them in my personal life. So let's talk about how to do it. I'm going to give you some tools. So first tool is this one. Imagine for a second that you are on a website and you meet somebody on this website. Maybe it's one of these dating apps. And within the first 5 minutes of the conversation, you say, "Can I meet your parents?" That would be a little off-putting to the person on the other side because of this. As human beings, we've got these little circles in our heads. And this is what I call like a little traffic light. When I first meet someone on a cold call, there's really no trust. I'm in what I call the red zone. I'm in the red zone. And when I ask to meet the parents, that's something that I can only do when I'm in the green zone. So in the red zone, I don't know you. Maybe I want to chat with you first. And then maybe once I feel comfortable, I'll move into the yellow zone, which maybe is a phone call with you. Maybe I'll talk with you on the phone for a while. Maybe we'll have a Zoom chat eventually. And then I might move into the green zone where we meet for coffee or we have dinner together. What we end up doing as sales professionals on cold calls is we go right into the green zone really quickly. And so what I want to teach you today is listening for cues to see where you are. Are you in the red zone, yellow zone, or green zone? And then having the right tool to be able to move you in and out of these zones. You can go into the yellow zone, hear something, and have to go back into the red zone. So just because you're in the yellow zone doesn't necessarily mean you're done with the red zone. So level 1, when we're in that red zone, in the beginning of a cold call, we want to have phraseology and tactics that just disarm people because they're so used to high pressure sales tactics. Then we want to understand people. And then instead of responding and telling people what to do, we want to ask questions that allow the other person to decide if they want to continue the conversation. We want to be a guide. We can only guide them once we kind of pass through those first 2 levels. Let's actually show you what this looks like in a personal situation. So imagine Scott Barker comes to me and he says, "Josh, I had a really rough day today. I'm stressed with all the projects I have at work, but I'm afraid to talk to my boss about it." If you were using the old school approach to overcoming and changing Scott's mind, you'd say something like this. If I was attached to the outcome, I want to help Scott, I'd say this. "Hey, Scott, I don't get why you let your boss take advantage of you. What the hell are you thinking? Here's what you need to do first thing Monday morning." And because of how human beings are wired, Scott is not going to listen to that. It's the same thing as if your significant other comes to you with a problem and you start giving advice and solutions. They're going to be shut down because everyone has a hunger to be heard first. So instead, we're going to detach from the outcome and we're going to understand Scott. And that might sound like this using tool 1. It's called a pause. It's really hard. If you watch a lot of Carl Rogers videos, he's the master at this. He pauses for an uncomfortably long amount of time. You'll find that if you pause for 3 seconds, many times people will continue the talk. And just because it's so rare to have silence, I'm going to model that for you right now. Here's what it sounds like. A little uncomfortable, but that's the first thing. It's about self-restraint. When you hear an objection, self-restrain yourself from responding. Just count to 3. Tools 2 and 3 kind of work together. You might say this. Scott says, I'm stressed with all the projects I have at work. I'm afraid to talk to my boss about it. And you might say, with a slight uptone, all the projects? As if to say, tell me more. This is a technique that Carl Rogers and Chris Voss call mirroring. And what it usually does is it gets the other person to share more information with you and make them feel like you're actually listening to what they have to say. I thought this was a little hokey when I first stumbled across it, but when I tried it in my personal life and in my business life, it worked like a charm. My wife knows about this technique, and even though she knows that I'm doing it, she keeps talking because it feels good when people are actually listening to what you have to say. Next technique, after the person talks, is you might say something like this. Sounds like you're afraid your boss might view you in a negative light. Sounds like these projects came at the worst possible time. Seems like it's hard to keep your head above water. Now, what this is not is mirroring and parroting back what Scott said. What this is reading between the lines and describing the underlying emotion that someone's feeling. And boy, when you do that, do people feel good? Because oxytocin is actually being released into the brain. It's actually a chemical reaction. It's called labeling. Let me actually show you what that looks like. This is Carl Rogers counseling a patient, Brian. And in the counseling session, which you can watch on YouTube, Brian said this to Carl Rogers. You know, when I walk, that is when I'm feeling badly, I walk hunched over and sort of like I had a bellyache, which I actually do have psychologically. And here's Rogers. It just makes you more or less half a man. Is that it? And only able to do your work. Notice what he's not doing here is just repeating back what he said. He's kind of getting to the underlying emotion of it. And if you watch this video, the guy just opens up and has these massive breakthroughs during this session just from the simple act of someone listening to him. It's fascinating. Chris Voss did this to me when I was on my podcast. At some point in the podcast, I said, you know, my dad wanted to finish a triathlon when he turned 50, but unfortunately he got cancer and died before he got the chance. Voss paused and said this. Sounds like you were really close with your dad. And even though I knew what Chris was doing, I felt this feeling inside that I was really close to Chris, even though I really don't know who he was, because he was able to describe this sort of underlying emotion that I was feeling. Very powerful technique. So applying that to objections, we have a vendor for that. You might say, a vendor? With a slight uptone. And then you might hang a label on it. Sounds like you're happy. Sounds like you're on cloud 9. Sounds like you're tickled pink with what you have. Now, oddly enough, when you do this, and I've done this a ton of times, and my clients have done this too, what sometimes happens is the prospect will say, well, I'm not really exactly on cloud 9. And they'll start kind of telling you all the reasons why they're not really on cloud 9, right? So sounds like you're ecstatic. Well, I wouldn't say I'm ecstatic. No? And they keep talking. So practice mirrors and labels in your personal life so that they become automatic in your professional life. So 3 tools so far, the pause, the mirror, and the label. Let's go on to tool number 4. So Justin Michael, a good friend of mine, another sales coach, I had the pleasure of listening to one of his cold calls. And the prospect came at him with angry confrontational energy. You probably have experienced this on a cold call if you've been cold calling for any amount of time. I know I have. I know Scott has. This is what the prospect said specifically. hey, buddy, it's 6:30 at night. I don't want calls right now, especially not 3 times in a row. Now, Justin was using one of those dialers, parallel dialers that calls people over and over and over again. So this guy was really amped up. And if you heard his tone, it was really, really high. So I want to pause here for a second and ask the audience, based on the techniques that you just learned, and this is a new tool I haven't taught you, but how would you respond to this?
We've got, we got some pause. So they're listening. Some people are paused. Got 3 times in a row. Sounds like you've had a long day. Sounds like you've had way too many sales. People cold calling you today.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Who said that one?
They're coming in too fast, man. You're too popular. Let me see. More Salim. I'm sorry.
That was great. I love that one because it really sort of labels probably what's going on. This is actually a new tool I'm going to share with you right now. This is tool number 3, and see if you could pick up what Justin did, and then we'll actually name it. So here's what Justin said. If he didn't use this tool, he would say something like this: hey, but can I just take 27 seconds, tell you why I'm calling, and then you can decide if you want to continue the conversation? That would have been a disaster. And I've heard that on enough cold calls to know, because we're trying to go to the green zone and we are in the red part of the circle. So we got to use our diffusers. Here's what it means to detach. This is exactly what Justin said in a very calm tone voice. I'm sorry for the late call. I'm on the West Coast. It looks like your number accidentally flew into my dialer. I feel like such a jerk. And the prospect responded with this. And the call went on for 14 minutes. What did Justin do? What was the technique? Anybody know? What did he do there?
Someone's saying that's a pullback, accusation audit. We've got labeling. Self-deprecation. We've got.
Yeah, good. You guys are on the right track. You guys are on the right track. So language like "I'm sorry," "I apologize," "I feel," that should be "feel," "I feel like a jerk." Change that real quick. That's going to bother me. I feel like a jerk for getting the spelling wrong on that slide. These are words that are making you the person that's causing the problem. A lot of times people refer to this as falling on the sword. Whenever someone comes at you with confrontational energy and you say you're a jerk, unless you're talking to a complete sociopath, it is going to absolutely diffuse any confrontational energy coming at you almost 100% of the time. I had this happen to me a couple weeks ago in a negotiation where I sensed the prospect thought I was not being fair. And I said to him, sounds like I'm being unfair. And it just opened up the dialogue. So owning that. So that's tool number 4, which is falling on the sword. And it's a great tool to use when you feel big confrontational energy coming at you and you're not exactly sure what to do. You just pause. And Justin did a masterful job there of saying, hey, I'm so sorry. I thought I was calling the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. I don't know how this number got into my dialer. I feel like just such a jerk today. And you'll find most of the time people will rescue there. But Josh, not if you're doing it to sort of get something. Remember, this intent has to be pure. And the intent is not to move anything forward and to get anything, but to keep the intent pure, which is to just see if the prospect wants to continue the conversation or not. If you're using these techniques and your underlying motivation is to move things forward, they will not work. People will be able to pick up on it because your tonality will be off.
Yeah, a few people picked up on that. Chris Leanne has a question here. What if the person senses you lied about the dialer? Like if your intentions aren't pure, you could get in hot water in that specific example.
That's exactly right. So the idea is never lie.
Yeah.
So in this case, the prospect said he doesn't like to be called 3 times. Justin was in fact using a parallel dialer. So you could say, and he didn't know he was calling the person, then they were on the East Coast. He was on the West Coast. That was not a lie. That was a truth because Justin's intent is pure. And again, this kind of gets back to having the right intent, having this abundance mindset. Lots of people to call, and it's okay if someone wants to continue the conversation with you. It's also okay if they don't. You can't create the motivation. You can only align with it. You can only create an environment where people feel comfortable telling you the truth. That's all this is. And sometimes the truth is no. But if you think everything is going to be a yes, it's going to set forth a lot of bad behavior. So let's go to tool number 5. Again, I'm going to show you the tool, and then you tell me what it is. So 2 examples. Here's example number 1. I'm going to play you the beginning of a cold call.
Hi, I'm trying to reach Amy.
This is Amy.
Hi, Amy. You're probably going to hate me because this is a cold call. Do you want to hang up or can I ask you a question?
No, that was probably the best introduction there. Does that usually work?
If I'm being honest, it works maybe a quarter of the time. And if I'm being even more honest, that was probably the best reaction I've gotten from it.
Okay, so that's example 1. Here's example 2. This is Chicago. I was looking for an apartment to rent, and the realtor showed me an apartment on Chestnut and Rush, and this is what he said the second I walked into the apartment. Josh, I don't want you to get too excited about this place until I tell you about the AC. It's a window unit, which means you might think it's going to be loud. It's a second example, same technique. P.S. I ended up renting that place, even though I thought I would never rent a place with a window unit because I thought it would be loud. Technique number 3, company that I work with called Alteryx. One of the objections that they would always get on a cold call or when they would have conversations was, we have Tableau for that. Even though Alteryx complements Tableau, that was just a perception that the prospect had. So in the script, we added this. It's just a small part of the script. Hey, we're showing analysts who are already using Tableau a different approach for X, desired outcome. So I was hoping I could ask you a couple questions to see if this would be relevant. So 3 examples. 1, we're actually bringing forth the objection in the actual cold call script proactively for Tableau. 2, we're bringing up the air conditioner unit. And 3, we're telling people they're going to hate us. What do those 3 things have in common? What's the technique that these have in common? Anybody know?
Diffusion, no pressure, managing expectations, honesty, bringing up the objection before they do.
Yeah, so bringing up the negative that people have is a magical superpower for diffusing any negative. Chris Voss calls it labeling negatives diffuses negatives every time. You can proactively prevent objections in your script, in your cold call scripts, if you just bring them up. So
how Eminem won the rap battle in 8 Mile.
Oh yeah, that's true at the end. That's a good example, right? So we have an accounting firm, right? If that's an objection that you always get, we're showing CFOs in the private healthcare sector a lesser known method to avoid making overpayments on property taxes that are often missed by their accountants. Is going to prevent, we have an accountant for that. So this is called an accusation audit. You're labeling the negative thing that the other person is probably thinking. So in the instance of the cold call, you're probably going to hate me because this is a cold call, is an attempt to label the negative thing. It's a great tool for diffusing pressure. All right, let's go to the next one. So these are all red zone techniques. Those tactics that I just shared with you and that phraseology you can use when you're sensing you're in the red zone, and they're going to get you out of the red zone. And they're going to move you into the yellow zone. How are you going to know you're in the yellow zone? The prospect's going to start talking. The person that you're talking with in your personal life is going to start talking. And you're going to want to jump right into the green zone because you're like, oh my God, this stuff's working. So let's actually talk a little bit about as you move into level 2 and the conversation starts to flow a little bit. So Here's just for some context. Trident is a company that helps employers with a big problem. The number 2 expense behind payroll is benefits. And this is actually an image from an email that articulates the value visually. So the cost of benefits typically rises by about 8 to 10% every year. And Trident has a way to flatten that curve. So someone says, we have a vendor for that. Level 1 might be to pause, mirror, a vendor, label. Sounds like you're ecstatic with what you have, with what you're doing. And then, just out of curiosity, what are you doing to mitigate or to prevent the cost of benefits increasing 9 to 15% year over year? It's what I call an illumination question. It's going to get someone to think differently about how they're getting the job done today. And preferably, you're going to ask it in a multiple choice fashion in a very calm tone. You guys have like an HSA? Are you bidding out insurance plans every quarter? Or can you automatically see which employees qualify for plans with lower premiums? Now, since the person's been talking a little bit, because you're out of the red zone and you asked this question, they're going to open up a little bit. This question is magical because it starts to get someone to think differently about the problem that they may or may not know about. And you're giving them multiple choice answers to make it a little bit easier for them to answer, while also showing that you are aware of how people are mostly getting the job done today. That third option that you see down at the bottom is what their life could be. When you ask a illumination question like this, what are you doing to mitigate so that you can achieve X? Or how do you know this is getting done? And you do it in a very humble way and you're curious, regardless of the answer. You're coming from a place of curiosity. You'll start to create a gap between where people are now and where they might want to be. It sort of opens up the dialogue to see if there's an opportunity beyond what they have now to be able to accomplish a goal. So these illumination questions are key. Another example for a car wash bucket. If I had a car wash bucket and you wanted to sell me a new one, you might say, hey, Josh, what are you doing to ensure that your car wash mitt doesn't scratch your car? What I don't know is that there's dirt that can get on the sponge and on my car, and this new bucket, you can jostle the dirt on this grate and it settles to the bottom of the car and off your bottom of the bucket and off your car. So very, very powerful questions, very hard to come up with so they don't feel like they're leading. Chris Voss calls this a calibrated question. They start with what or how. And the example that Chris gives when he was negotiating for hostages, it would demand $75,000 in response for her release. And he would say, how do I know she's still alive? It enlists the help of the other person to solve the problem. It enlists the help of the other person to solve the problem, makes them your ally. So what are you doing to? How's that going to work? So a calibrated question is a level 2. And then guide, tool 7. People are always asking for time. Do you want to meet Tuesday or Wednesday? Did I catch you at a good time? Don't you agree? Does this make sense? All these questions that people typically ask are intended to get people to say yes, 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 yes. As we start to move into the green zone, we want to stay away from those questions if we can, because oftentimes when people feel like they're being led into a yes trap, they can recoil a little bit. And so Voss is just a really great technique here. It's called a no-orientated question. And it sounds like this. After you've mirrored and you've labeled and you've done the calibrated question, and maybe you mirror and a little bit label in there, you might say something like this. Would it be a horrible idea? Would it be a terrible idea? Would it be a ridiculous idea for you to see what other CFOs are doing in the healthcare sector to flatten the curve so you could see what your options are for the future? Now, I'm doing a couple things here. One, I'm not asking this question until I've gone through the mirroring and the labeling and the calibrated question. And 3, I'm actually taking away the pressure of the now. The words that take away the pressure of the now are what, Scott? What are the words there that are taking away the pressure of the now?
So you can see what your options are for the future. There's
You
no
got it.
you're not asking Tuesday or Wednesday. It's like up in the air.
Yeah. See what your options are for the future, which takes away the pressure of the now. Would it be a horrible idea? When you phrase questions like that, typically what you hear is, that's not a horrible idea. That wouldn't be a terrible idea. I'd be open for that, especially when you're taking away the pressure of me having to do things now. So these are no-orientated questions, really powerful. You could turn any yes-orientated question into a no-orientated question pretty easily. So go for no. So let's actually show you some more examples, more practical examples. This is Carl Rogers counseling an angry individual. And I want you to notice what he's doing here when this person starts to get angry.
Hey, that's a bunch of crap. Mm-hmm. You know, don't tell me about the way that I should do it, or give me all that nonverbal stuff about saying that I'm okay, but by nonverbally saying, hey, you know, you're really not okay, you know. And I don't want to hear that kind of stuff anymore.
I get what you're saying, and I also feel quite strongly that I want to say, it's okay with me if you're angry here.
But you know, it's hard to know how to be angry. You know,
sure. I'm not saying you have to be. I'm just saying it's okay with me. If you feel like being angry, you can be angry.
You really believe that?
Damn right.
Not sure how to respond to that at all.
What did he do? What did he do there, Scott?
Incredible pause. Incredible pause.
What else did you notice?
He also did some great labeling, and he said it exactly how he was feeling. He said, I'm angry. He said, okay, sounds like you're angry. It's okay to be angry.
Yeah.
And then he didn't know what to do.
That's exactly right. So what I'm just doing is I'm just taking that principle and we're going to apply it now to an objection, right? Another common one, reach out to me in a few months. This one, we don't know if it's a truth or not a truth because we don't have enough information, right? There's no oomph. So we have to go through those levels to get to more truth. And so here's how that might sound. In a few months, just with the pause. And what you'll find when you say that is they'll give you some more information. And you might actually find a real reason why it needs to be a few months. And know that that's the truth. You might say something like this. Sounds like I called you at the worst possible time. Now, Scott, why am I saying worst possible?
Because then they're most likely going to well, it's not the worst time.
Right.
You know, I could have been stuck in, a very important meeting. It's not the worst. It's okay.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I might sound, they might start talking, and then I might say something like this. I think I'm being really too pushy here. I might move into the yellow zone. And to get to the truth, I might say, just like Carl Rogers did, it's okay if this isn't a priority for you this year. And I might pause there. I like to add a little humor to the end of it. So I might say, would you like to fire me right now? It's okay. I've been fired 3 times this week. What I'm trying to get away from is the following up with no interest. Oftentimes when people hear follow up with me in a few months, they put it as an opportunity and there's a lot of gunk in the pipeline. So what we're trying to do here is sort of get to the truth behind the objection. And we could take a play out of Carl Rogers' book here on that one. Upper management wouldn't want to change. They're old school. I'm sorry, old school? Sounds like management is tickled pink with your current solution. Right? In the red zone, we're going to get them talking. Yellow zone, just out of curiosity. And then illumination question. What are you doing to? How would you know? And then we're going to go to going for no. Would it be a horrible idea to see if this is something that we could build a business case for? Not for now, but for maybe in the future. And you'll find when you go through these levels, when you get to green, people are going to be much more likely to have a dialogue with you because they've been heard. We're considering a few vendors. Level 1, pause. Mirror, a few vendors. Level 2, calibrated question. This is when I did 2 months ago. Hey, John, you've got John Burrows. You've got Jocko over at Winning by Design. You got Richard Harris. What's making you consider a former elementary school teacher? Notice what I'm doing. I'm enlisting the help of the other person to help me solve the problem. Another example, your price is too high. This is real negotiations. You can see these in my badass guide, the actual transcripts, but I'm giving you guys some of the high level. My price was $11,875. Here's the prospect. Your price is too high. Me, I'm sorry, too high? Level 2, isolate the problem. Other than price, is there anything holding you back? What you'll typically hear when you ask this question is the real objection. Well, yeah, we're not doing this. We don't have any, this is not something we would do this quarter. In this case, they said, yeah, the only thing is price. And then I said this is probably going to come across as intrusive, but it sounds like you have a limit to what you want to invest in sales training. I don't want to bid against myself here. And they said, yeah, it's $8,500. And then I went to a more assertive tone because now I'm sort of in the green zone with this prospect. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I just can't do that. And then the Carl Rogers pause. They came up, 9,500 is our max, level 2 calibrated question. That's a very generous offer. I really appreciate you considering me, but how can I reduce price without reducing the number of participants? Right? Enlisting their help to solve the problem. They said to me, just discount your price. Assertive. I'm sorry, that just won't work for me. And then I shut my mouth, really hard to do. And then a day later, they got approval for 11.8. I don't want an annual contract. Level 1 pause. Level 2 mirror. Annual contract. Level 2 calibrated question. What do you hate about annual contracts? Well, I don't hate them, but I really don't know if people are actually going to use the software. Level 2 label. Sounds like you don't want to be locked into 12 months if there isn't adoption. And what you'll typically hear when you do this really well is, yeah, that's right. And then we could say this. You're probably going to think this isn't feasible, but would you be opposed? Would it be a ridiculous idea for us to take responsibility of ensuring there's adoption? We can guarantee that in the paperwork. And this contract closed for 12 months. Real price negotiation via email for me, for my business. Hi, Emma. She was the prospect. I can have a proposal. To you by the end of the day, but assuming we're aligned on the proposal, is there budget for the investment? People ask for proposals all the time. I never send a proposal without saying, you get the proposal, what happens next? And so she said, we're good. It's 8K. And I was at 10K. Can we shorten the project to make it fit? What did I say, Scott? What do you think I said?
No.
I said a little bit nicer, but yeah. That's right. Thanks for your generous offer. That's what's called positive labeling. Thanks for that's so generous. I really wish I could do the project for 8K. I really do. But how would that work? I'm not sure how to shorten the project without compromising your goals. Help me, Emma, solve the problem. I completely understand. What about I send you over 2 proposals? Would that work for you? Scott, what am I going to say?
Sounds great. No.
Thanks for getting creative. I really wish I could do that. But how can I create a short and a long proposal without sacrificing your goals? What if I broke the payment up into installments? Would that be helpful? Let me check. Great news. Got the 10K. That's a real price negotiation. Last one. Here's my Stratocaster guitar that I wanted to sell because I got into acoustic. The price was $500. This guy comes over to my house with his 8-year-old kid. It's his 8-year-old kid's birthday. The guy says to me, my kid really loves your guitar, but he only has $250. Plays the kid card on me. So I'll give you $250. Guy takes out the $250. The kid's holding the guitar. That's a very generous offer. I really wish I could do that, but I simply can't let it go for that price. Okay, $300, my final offer. Generous, but I simply can't do that. Look, you win. $350, my kid really wants it. That's all I have. To which I said, calibrated question. How can I reduce the price when I have 3 people coming to look at the guitar this afternoon, which was the truth. To which he said, let me go to the ATM. And he came back. So these are some strategies: pausing, mirroring, labeling, falling on the sword, accusation audits, calibrated questions, and going for no. These are easy concepts to understand, but they are not easy to implement when you're in the heat of the moment. So practice. Chris Voss has a great masterclass on this, and I'm always around if you have any questions. I want to thank you guys so much for being so generous with your time, and I'll stick around for questions.
Josh, you're a king. We're getting so much excellent feedback. You always bring the heat. We do have some great questions. There was a funny comment. We're going to lose it because so many people are saying thank you now. Milos says, man, I'd love to see you walk into Pawn Stars and negotiate with Rick. Can we make that happen? If anyone knows the Pawn Stars guy, we will make that happen on Sales Hacker, a live negotiation for your new guitar with Rick, and we'll see how high we can get. That would be amazing. Okay, we do have some great questions, and again, everyone, the comments, the amount of engagement through this, I think it always blows me away when we have you on, Josh. I think this is the most engagement we've had in a very long time. So, first question, which is one I think I see often, and I think what you're going to say, but I would love to hear it. Josh, how can I practice applying these processes and tools in any situation? You always have great examples, but I have a hard time correlating them into my own real-time examples. What do you recommend to do to get better at this?
Yeah, so I think there's one thing that I do that's really good, and I'll just do it with Scott right now. So we'll just model this. And this is something, again, I learned from Chris Voss, but it's a great way to sort of flex the muscle. And you can do it with your colleague at work, or you can do it with your spouse at home. So Scott, tell me something that you're passionate about, either in business or in your personal life.
Passionate about Japanese whiskey. I've come to love through isolation.
What is it about Japanese whiskey that you're passionate about?
I think there's all these new brands that I get to explore, and I'm kind of on this exploration phase where I get to try all these new different kinds that I've never tried before.
Different kinds?
Yeah, there's this new one, Sentioki. I can't even pronounce them, but Sentioki, I think I'm going to bastardize the pronunciation. And it's fun. It's almost like I'm on a journey to find my favorite one. That's my favorite one right now.
Sounds like you want to be like the world's most interesting man.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I don't want to just have, normal whiskey when I have people over next. It's like, hey, look at my assortment of Japanese whiskey.
Yeah, so
and I know the best ones. I'm knowledgeable on it.
So even though Scott knew what I was doing, we're kind of using mirroring and labeling in the normal conversation. Hey, what project are you working on that's exciting to you right now? And strike up a conversation with anybody. And people would love to talk about stuff like that. So practice mirroring and labeling is a really good place to start. And the labeling is the hard part. The mirroring is going to kind of come easy, but the labeling, again, is not parroting back. Notice I said to Scott, I didn't repeat it back. I said, sounds like you want to be the most interesting man in the world. I don't know if that was a good label, but if the label's bad or doesn't work, what you'll find is Scott will say, well, not exactly. I want to do this. So that's okay too. Sometimes with the label too, if Scott answered in a short way, I've had that happen before. What you can do from a label perspective is say, sounds like I'm not really understanding the full picture here. The labels always will work. It's just a degree of the label. So to answer your question, practice in your personal life. And I highly recommend you grab Chris Voss's masterclass. He's got a bunch of different drills in there as well. But just, getting your reps in your personal life will help it become more natural.
Great response. Thank you. Here's another one. It's in the same vein. And this is from Leslie. Leslie, great question. Do you feel that these techniques can be applied equally regardless of your ICP, or is it more situational? Like, this is a cold call. Do you want to hang up bit? Is your experience that this works as well at like the Fortune 100 C-suite, or is this more for mom and pop shops?
Yeah. So
what are your thoughts there?
the bottom line is if the person has a limbic system, if they're human, it works. So it's not about ICP. This is a approach based on how people are wired. Everyone has an amygdala, everyone has a limbic system, and humans respond in predictable ways. We know from fMRI studies what lights up the brain, and we know that people love to be heard and understood. And so it doesn't really matter if it's a CEO or anybody. It doesn't work on anybody that's not a human, however.
I like it. All right. So my cat won't fall for this? My new kitten that
Maybe
I have?
not. I don't know.
Not going to work? All right. This is a good question. You did show one email example, but we didn't go too heavy into it. Arthur asked, Josh, how well does this transfer over to email?
Yeah, so it depends on the situation. I did show you a negotiation that happened over email, but if you're asking for cold email, it's a different conversation that we'd have to unpack separately. This is an approach that is really useful when people are pushing back, or there's a negotiation, or there's some, confrontational energy. It's not really for cold emailing, although there's some of these tactics that I have used, but it's a different context.
Got it. But can be found in your B2B Badass Growth Guide, right? There's that. Yeah.
Would it be if
you want to learn any more of this, and a lot of people are asking for like the deck and examples, Josh has a guide that you can go check out. All of this is going to be in there.
Would it be a terrible idea for you to buy my guide?
All right, we have so many questions. I'm just going to keep rapid firing. I like this question. Does Carl Rogers have a book or any other resources I can consume?
Yeah, so Carl Rogers is a guy that you can Google. I highly recommend that you can certainly buy his books, but I have found listening to him, so much of what he does is his tone. And so go on YouTube and Google Carl Rogers and just consume all his content. He did something really interesting back in the 60s even, or 70s. He actually counseled people live in front of audiences. These people opted into it. And then some of these things got really raw. But these techniques that you're seeing that Chris Voss uses, a lot of these techniques are based on Rogers' work. And so all we're doing here is applying them to a sales context.
Awesome. All right. Do you have any sequencing structure and or copywriting material for creating effective messaging in your B2B growth guide?
Yes. That's pretty much 95% that.
Yeah. Here's a good one. I've had this approach backfire on me. What are your suggestions here? And I've actually had this. I don't know if I've told you this, Josh. As I was practicing this technique, I think it was after the tour, and I was like just trying to like figure it out. I spent some time with you. I also had it backfire on me. I used it. I wasn't that good at it yet. I used it in a situation where I probably shouldn't have. It was a pretty intense situation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so a couple things. First, if I was doing this with you, I'd say backfire. And I want to learn a little bit more about the context, because context is really important. But for the purposes of this discussion, what I will say is there's no Yoda, right? So none of these, you are going to get torpedoed once in a while using these techniques. What I have found as I've gotten better at this is it's very, very rare. Tonality matters a lot, and curiosity matters even more. If you're not genuinely curious and you have an agenda in your head, the way you behave and the things that you say are interpreted differently. But if someone's coming at me and it backfires, I'm in the red zone, my default is going to be to say something like, sounds like I'm being an asshole. Mm-hmm. And most of the time when you say that, if you say it with the right tone, that'll kind of back it off. I don't know what happened before that. I don't know about this exact situation. But, when you practice this technique, does it ever backfire on you? I have found it to never backfire on me ever in terms of escalating things. Sometimes I don't get what I want and there's no deal, but it never escalates conversations. It never makes conversations more strenuous. It always calms things down, but the tonality is key.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That takes us to the time. We have a ton of questions for all of you that have questions. I'm sure if you connect with Josh on LinkedIn, write a little thoughtful note, say, hey, I just attended this webinar, have a couple more questions for you. I've seen Josh, he's incredibly good at getting back to everyone with like voice notes and messages. He is human, so it might take some days, but he does it. I was very impressed. Josh, thank you so much, man. It's always a lot of fun hanging out with you and seeing the community's reaction every time you hop on here. So we'll have to get you back here soon, man. But have a great rest of your week. And for everyone who joined us, thank you so much. Do go check out this man's B2B growth guide, badass growth guide. It is incredible. I've heard literally no one give it less than a 10 out of 10. So check it out. Do yourself a favor.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Have a good one.